Welcome to the CLB Forge podcast. This is the show to help equip you and your church for mission, ministry, and multiplying disciples. Here are your hosts, Pastor Mike Natal and Dr. Ryan Nilsson.
Hello and welcome to episode 46. It's another Church on Track edition with Ryan and I. We're really excited as we've been chugging along. Total pun intended there. Chugging along, Church on Track. To episode 50. And guys, we are just so excited for some of the things that we are going to be laying out. But we're not big on spoilers, so we're not going to tell you any more than that, other than saying get amped up. Also, we'd love to hear your opinions too, about what you'd like to hear and what you'd like to talk about. And so if you could just interact with us on Facebook or through email, that would be greatly appreciated. But get amped up for episode 50 as we have a couple announcements that are going to be made then.
Yeah.
One of the things, Ryan, that we might want to look into is merch. Maybe merch by episode 100. So maybe not episode 50.
What would it be? What would the merch be?
Oh, dude, we got to get like a sweet hat. Or maybe like a water bottle, or actually, it'd be really cool, like stickers. Stickers or like a patch or something with the logo. Yeah. So
that's good.
Or like a sweet hoodie. I don't know. There's so many options, man, for sweet merch out there, especially for, the Forge.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
We, who knows? Maybe that'll be in the pipe work to happen, but we'll see how it goes. Okay. All right. So today we're continuing our Church on Track series where we look at ways that you can keep your church on the right track, joining God in his mission, and how to avoid traps that can get you off track. We're in the middle of our series. We're working through 7 common breakdown areas, and we always like to just recap the 7 before we get into it. First one is leadership. Second one is transformational spirituality. Third one, worship. Fourth one, evangelism and mission. Fifth one, WandaVision. Sixth, functional structures. And 7, leading change. So now, Ryan, before we get into today's breakdown, which is number 6, functional structures, I had a question. So I've been leading a Bible study called God's Word During Exile. It's myself and 3 other pastors. We lead a Bible study through the book of Revelation.
Cool.
And one of the things that we're noticing through the book of Revelation is that it talks a lot about the number 7, and 7 being the number of completeness. So I wondered if, like, subliminally, I'm sure you knew that already, but I'm wondering, like, a lot of your series have gone in 7. Did you do that on purpose?
It must have been subconsciously. I'm sure I had that in the back of my head. Yep.
There you go. So that's kind of interesting.
Like,
the number of completeness.
Would not want to do 3 series of 6 points. That would not be good.
Yeah, that's probably the opposite of what we want to do.
Yep.
So,
yep.
But I think it would totally be biblical to do 70 of 7. So we're on 2. So we got 68 more to go to become beyond perfect. And we'll see, or beyond complete, if you will. So we'll see how far we get through these Church on Tracks. But I know that we have another one already getting planned and worked through. So there will be a 3rd edition with 7 points also.
Yeah, that's coming up soon. It'll be
coming up soon.
It's on the horizon. We're getting ready for it.
All right, Ryan. So we're going to talk about the number 6 on here, which is functional structures. So maybe people don't really know what that is. Personally, I don't really know what that is. So we're just happy that you're going to be here to kind of unpack it and make it so that by the end of this podcast, we'll sound like, we know what functional structures are. No problem. This is a piece of cake. So why is it important to have functional structures in a church? And if I can add a little sub question to that, what are functional structures?
Yeah, let's start there. Functional structures are that term is really about your church being effectively organized. So what are the lines of decision making? What are the lines of communication? Who works together to do what? Who has permission to make decisions? What decisions are off limits for those people, and they need to check with whoever is supervising them. And then kind of a key thing is like, what are the lines of accountability? So everyone should be under authority to someone else. Does every ministry have somebody that to whom they're under submission, to whom they're accountable? So that's what we're talking. Oh man, I'm just going crazy today. Hitting sound equipment.
Easy there, Incredible Hulk. Sheesh.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about. And there could be some challenges that get in the way of this happening effectively. We'll get into that in a second. But why it's important to have functional structures is because it affects so much of our ability to engage in our mission effectively. And our mission is what shapes the structure of our church. That is what should be shaping the structure of our church. Our mission to go and make disciples, to make new disciples in our community, around the world, to help people grow as disciples. And if we're going to do that effectively, it means that the structure or the way we organize and operate the church is going to be constantly changing. Because our mission field is constantly changing, it means that we need to continually adjust how we deliver ministry and do ministry in our community. And sometimes they're big changes, sometimes they're small and gradual. A lot of times we avoid doing this work. And we'll get into that a little bit.
Now that I know what we're talking about with functional structures and encouraging people to remain accountable to others, one of the ways that I like to pitch that, because sometimes people get offended. They're like, why? You don't think that I'm going to do a good enough job? And it actually has less to do with me thinking that they're going to do a good job. They've been put in that position because the church recognizes them as a leader for whatever you're asking them to do. The accountability portion is not only to make sure that they continue on the trajectory that was initially planned, but also it kind of saves their butt too, because if somebody comes along and is like, if they get accused of doing something, if you don't have a person who's holding you accountable, you might not have a leg to stand on, where with an accountability person, you have a person who, if things go in a negative direction, they can step up and advocate for you, which is tremendous. In situations like that.
Yeah. And another huge part of accountability that's really important is that person to whom you're accountable, they should be serving and supporting you. That's part of that responsibility they have if they're overseeing you. It's not just to make sure you're doing your job. It's also to find out how they can help you and support you and make you succeed. So whoever is supervising you should be regularly checking in. How's it going with your ministry plans? And then some of the questions they should be asking: how can I help you? Is there a problem that I can help you deal with? Is there a barrier that I can remove for you? Are there resources you need but don't have? That's a huge benefit of a healthy accountability relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that sounds spectacular within the realm of leadership. So what are some problems that can develop over time as we're going through these functional structures?
Yeah, we don't like to make changes to these because it can be complicated to lay them out, and usually they're set up to serve a certain form of ministry at a certain time period in our church. And unfortunately, a lot of times we put our structure right into the Constitution, something that's very difficult to change. And so like when I'm visiting with churches, one of the common issues is, we've needed to make some changes to our Constitution. So there's a pile of structural details that don't need to be in the document like a Constitution. Basics about your statement of faith and membership, like that's the kind of stuff you put in a Constitution. These kinds of details that need to change over time could be put in some other type of formal document that's not as binding or difficult to change as a Constitution. Any case, we often avoid making those little adjustments to our structure that keep us effective and functioning healthily. And when we don't do that work, over time, structures that once served the mission become ineffective because the community and culture have changed, but the way our church operates hasn't. Another challenge that can arise with that is there can become this growing attitude of, ministry is done by pastors and professional Christians, like, people who are paid to do ministry. They're the ones that do it. Maybe the elders too, but, this isn't for me. As ministries become less effective, people are less interested in helping out with them. So, hey, we need people to help with this ministry because no one's helping. That's not a very exciting call to action. People don't get motivated by helping lead a ministry that's really struggling. And so, if it's not being effective in your mission, it's hard to motivate people to join in. Another challenge that can happen if we don't change our structures, and this is especially in congregational churches, there can be a tendency to bypass, so one problem is, the pastors do all the ministry, right? The other opposite of the spectrum is pastors should have no role in the leadership of the church. And all committees, the church is organized around a bunch of committees, and all the committees report directly to the elders or even directly to the congregational business meeting. And this results in a few things. Like if all the committees are reporting to the elders, they don't have time to do their jobs, their spiritual oversight role effectively. Another challenge is that those elders who are, the lay pastors of the church, they're not there at the church every day. And so it's hard for them to know. They're not aware of all the day-to-day details that a pastor is. If committees are reporting only to the congregation at their annual business meeting, it means that there's very little day-to-day, week-to-week accountability and support for that ministry. And so you can create all kinds of ministry silos. And these are a ministry silo. It's a negative term, and it refers to a ministry operating on its own, doing what it wants, when it wants, how it wants. And so you can't all pull in the same direction. It may not matter whether or not nobody may be evaluating whether or not the ministry is effective. So those are some of the challenges. And when churches revitalize, so when you look at the research, churches that have been dying and then they made a turnaround and started to grow, they made changes to the way they do ministry, especially in these areas. So listen to this list. The way they do prayer, children's ministry, evangelism, youth ministry, leadership, missions, assimilation, worship, small groups, facilities, and the organizational structure or the infrastructure of the church. That's a huge list. And I think coincidentally, it's interesting. Many of those areas are often perceived as don't touch or ever change this area, right? Like I think worship is a lightning rod one. The way our leadership operates, don't touch it. The way we use our building, you don't go there. Churches that are dying often refuse to change the structures that are ineffective, that once were key to the success of the church, but because the mission field has changed, the way we do ministry has to change, and it didn't change. Therefore, those once effective structures are now ineffective.
Yeah, that's always important to lay those out too. Like churches looking to revitalize or that have a positive track record of revitalization are doing specific things. And so you can see what those specific things are and then begin to see like, well, how's my church doing in the realm of one of these? And then see not so much. So here's a little encouragement from a pastor. If you're listening to this and you're not a pastor, something detrimental that you can do is take the list that Ryan just gave you and go to your pastor and say, see, these are the things that we need to do here. Instead of that, what I would encourage you to do is to think and pray on these issues. And if you're noticing that there is an issue that, or maybe multiple issues in your church that is not getting done, instead of going and demanding that it happens, think about ways that you as an individual can actually help with one of those ministries. And so think about how much better it would be, instead of going to a pastor or a leader and saying, see, our church is failing and here's the reason why we're not doing XYZ. Instead say, hey, I'm noticing that there is an opportunity for us to start a prayer ministry. Would the church be willing to allow me to begin a prayer ministry, or begin looking into worship and seeing if there are outside sources that could maybe help us to make our worship a little bit better? Or, oh, I'm thinking about maybe getting a group of people together to do a Bible study, or just have fun outside, or do things together for the furthering of God's kingdom. Would the church be okay if I start a group like that? Let me tell you, I would literally start doing backflips if I heard that. Or I would just start crying profusely. Yeah. You know, sometimes ministry for the leaders can feel very daunting, because they want to achieve so much and because they want to help so many people. And it would be great if the body of Christ were to step up and share that, because where one person gets excited, other people can get excited too. And it's so much easier to make sure, instead of being spread too thin, to be able to focus on one thing effectively is so much better in ministry than to spread yourself too thin and try to be a jack of all trades. Yeah.
I think too.
All right. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Ryan.
just on this list here, you think about all these areas where churches that turn around, they do the hard work of making changes in that whole list of areas. But oftentimes the starting point is a church, rather than wanting to make changes there in those areas, they say, the problem is the pastor. If we had a better pastor, that would magically solve all our problems. And it doesn't work that way. Now, it's good to have a great pastor and somebody who's an effective, clear communicator and preacher and has good leadership skills and can work with teams. It is important. Your pastor does make a difference. But I do see a pattern of, let's avoid changing these ministries because it means that we have to make changes to the way we operate. Let's put this on the pastor's back, because then that's something he has to do. It's something he has to change how he is, and it doesn't require a change on our part. So
that's important.
Yeah, so it's important not to fall into that trap of thinking.
So as we go into our last section, how can we create effective organizational structures for our current opportunities in ministry?
I've got 6 kind of key things to do. So I didn't use the number 7. Sorry about that. But I got 6 things. Okay, so first of all, number 1, have clear lines of communication and authority. Okay, so make it clear to the whole church how the church works together as a team and who oversees who. So most churches that are not like super huge, I think this is a good model in a congregational form of government. Congregation members have the most power. They call and elect pastors and elders, and to the pastor and elders, they delegate most of their decision-making, day-to-day decision-making authority. They retain big decisions, calling key leaders, budgets, things like that. Almost everything else they're delegating to their pastor and elders. The elder board, of whom the pastor's a part, they're responsible for ensuring that the church is fulfilling God's mission. So that's their job. Are we fulfilling God's mission for us? The elders then delegate the execution of the mission, carrying out how we are going to accomplish this, to the pastor. He's there. The senior pastor is there on a day-to-day basis. Has the most contact with ministry leaders. So he's responsible for the execution of the mission, carrying that out and leading the ministry teams to do that. But he, in turn, delegates most of his decision-making authority to the ministry leaders in the church. So oftentimes when structures need to change, the elders are hanging on to lots of decisions that they need to delegate to the pastor. The pastor is hanging on to lots of decisions that he needs to delegate to ministry leaders. And ministry leaders need to be empowered to go on and carry out decisions. So who reports to who, having everybody understand that is very important. Number 2, encourage your pastor to be an equipper, not just a doer. So a lot of us pastors, we really feel good. We feel validated when we do ministry, but our biggest impact is through whom we equip to do ministry. So as a your pastor will make a bigger impact if he's spending his time investing and developing ministry leaders to help care for the congregation versus if he did all the care himself. So in general, I think a lot of churches would do well if they had a team of people that were involved in spiritual care. The pastor's a part of it, and in times of crisis, he is there. But I think for the pastor to be the only one caring for people in the church, that's just not healthy. Number 3, using a team-based approach to ministry. I think that's really, really powerful. Christianity is a community, individual Christians, but our discipleship has a communal aspect to it. And I think the way we carry out ministry can reflect that too. There's a great book called Teams That Thrive, and they talk about 5 disciplines of effective teams. So I'll recommend this book here at the end, but real quick, here there are 5, from their research, 5 things that really make teams effective. The focus on purpose, the purpose of the team, leverage differences in team membership. So to have a variety of personalities and skills. Unhealthy teams tend to have all people the same skill set and personality. Healthy teams rely on inspiration rather than control to lead. We talked about that our last breakdown episode in vision. And then number 4, intentionally structure your decision-making process. So be clear about how you're going to make decisions and put some structure around that. We'll have to do an episode about decision-making someday. Basically, when we don't do that, the reason you want to have an intentional structure around that is if you don't, the louder people make the decisions. The dominant personalities steer the ship. And that's not always the best course of action for your church. It may be that somebody who is more quieter and likes to think and process about something, they may have the right idea for the group. It may be that somebody needs a little bit of time to think about it. So kind of taking the decision-making process and breaking it down. Like, for example, okay, first we're going to lay out all our options. Then we're going to weigh the pros and cons. Then we'll select a course of action. That actually allows people to participate in each step rather than just a more outspoken personality to domineer the direction there. I see a smile on your face, Mike.
I was just smiling because it has absolutely nothing to do with what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. All right.
But you hit the microphone for maybe the 5th time now this episode. So I'm just thinking,
that's hilarious.
Lindsay's gonna love this.
Sorry, Lindsay.
Yeah, it keeps making this noise.
All right, I'll stop. Good thing. All right, I better be careful. And then the 5th discipline, building a culture of continual collaboration, working together, and continuing to work through problems and challenges, look for solutions together. Okay. Number 4, remove separation between authority and responsibility. So I think this is really important, and one of the common challenges that I see where one group, one committee or board makes all the decisions, but then there's another group of people that are doing the work. So what you want, and that's a kind of a committee, right? A committee is a group of people, in the negative sense, a committee is a group of people. They don't do the ministry, but they make all the decisions about it. And that's just not a healthy model. So at a healthy team, the people who are doing the ministry also have the ability to make decisions for the ministry. So in an unhealthy setting, the opposite can happen, where maybe the elder board says, okay, you go do this ministry, but you have to come back and get approval from us. Any expenditures you're going to make, any big decisions, we need to make those for you. So you need to bring them to us, and then we'll okay it. A healthy model would be for the elders to say, okay, we're we're delegating leadership oversight to the pastor. Then the pastor says, all right, children's ministry, you're this leadership team. You guys have the authority to, within the bounds of our statement of faith, you need to recruit teachers and select a curriculum. You need to keep in mind these people need to be supportive of our church's beliefs, and we're going to entrust that to you. If you need our help determining that, we'll help you, but this is on you to carry out. And if you have effective leaders in your ministry and you give them the responsibility to do something, but not the authority to carry it out, they're going to get sick of it, and you'll lose them. Number 5, keep it simple. So dying churches tend to increase in complexity and have huge org charts, like lots of different ministries and committees and teams. They never like to see anything end, and they keep adding stuff to it. And because ending something is so painful, they just keep adding ministries, and things get more and more complicated. So keep it simple. And then last, beware the unhealthy effects of institutionalism. As churches age, they can enter into a stage as they begin to decline, a stage of institutionalism where they seek to preserve the status quo, and people protect positions of power. So they're less open to new ministries, new people stepping into leadership, because it represents a threat to the current leader's ability to control and lead the church. Those forces are present all the time. Most of us don't know that we're under the influence of those ideas. We think it's important as leaders, your job is to say no to things and keep things the same. That's actually, the definition of leadership includes influencing healthy change in the lives of others. So anyway, those are the 6 how-to pointers I would suggest. And then I want to recommend a couple books here. So one is The Equipping Pastor. It's an oldie but a goodie by R. Paul Stevens and Phil Collins. And this is about, is
that like the musician Phil Collins, the guy who wrote Tarzan?
I don't think so.
Oh.
Like, I can't dance, I can't talk. The only thing about me is the way that I walk.
Hey, you can't do that, or else we're gonna get copyrighted now. And that was so on point. I couldn't tell if it was Ryan or Phil Collins. So now we're probably gonna get copyrighted.
Get sued.
We're in trouble.
Sorry, everybody. I don't think it's that Phil Collins, no. But this is about how, if you're a pastor, it's written to pastors, how you can effectively equip and lead other people to do ministry.
Nice.
And hit the mic again. And then Teams That Thrive by Ryan Hartwig and Warren Bird. So another great book. That's what I got for you.
Cool, man. Ryan, thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. And I could tell this is a topic that really excites you, because you are very animated and very Italian in your movements. The arms were flailing all over the place, kind of like Kermit the Frog when he gets ready to introduce guests and stuff to the Muppet Show.
This is one of my favorite topics. I love working with teams, and I love the power of collaboration. It takes work.
Shows.
It's simple, but it's not easy, as they say. Yeah. And but I love when it happens. And to show you how excited I am, I'm going to smack the mic with a pencil. Just
Hey-o.
There we go.
Nice. Hey, so to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to our show today. Don't forget to subscribe to the show so that you can get notifications whenever the next podcast drops. We've been trying to release them on Tuesdays, so be on the lookout for those. And we'd love it if you could share the podcast with a friend or a colleague. Thanks so much for tuning in, and have a great rest of your week. See ya.
See ya.
This has been an episode of the CLB Forge podcast with Pastor Mike Natal and Dr. Ryan Nilsson. Thanks for listening. We welcome your questions and comments. Email us at podcast@clbforge.org.